Welcome back to In the Know. We got Mason and Jeremy both joining us after All-Star break, after Mardi Gras, after a whole host of events. Gentlemen, how are we doing? What's happening?
Like my hat says, New Orleans is not a real place. It's not.
How was your Mardi Gras? Did you run into Shia LaBeouf? I heard he was.
I avoided
terrorizing the town.
that man at all. Shia LaBeouf is credit to money talking, because every time when I was a kid, maybe because I'm black, I was always told that if you get arrested on Mardi Gras, you ain't making out the Ash Wednesday. Meanwhile, Shia LaBeouf made it in and out in 10 hours and was doing the same shit.
My favorite part about the whole Shia LaBeouf experience, didn't witness any of it, but there's videos. There's videos all over the internet, and there's a couple articles written, obviously in the local paper and whatnot. He tried to pay with a card at Miss May's like 3 times, and the bartender was like, "Dude, there's like 50 signs here that say cash only, my guy. Like, what are you trying?
There's an ATM right there.
There's an ATM, Rod, and we know you got it." But also, like, I used to work in the hospitality department. Like, even in the French Quarters, if you're stupid drunk, they're not going to serve you because we get in trouble. We can get arrested. So, yeah. The way he was acting, yeah. And talk shit, get hit, seems like going to the videos.
I saw none of this.
That's what happens when you're in Detroit.
Yeah. I feel like I keep close enough tabs still on the Instagram with my crew still in New Orleans, but like no one shared anything about this. That's
Dude,
so.
It
funny.
was a multi-day rampage. This guy was literally running around town like he owned it, and starting stuff where he shouldn't be starting stuff. Very embarrassing videos of him getting his ass handed to him. Disappointed, man. Disappointed. Don't come into the city and start that shit. Not on Mardi Gras, man. Don't do that. Welcome back to the chat.
They had too many beautiful people in this city for you to be the main character doing that dumb shit. To be completely honest with you.
Get that man some help.
That CJ picture was pretty cool.
CJ and his family seemed. I didn't run into it. So, First of all, multiple Pelicans players, guys who aren't even on this team anymore, were out and about town during Mardi Gras. I think Carlo, Eve, Trey, Najee, CJ, and a few others. And CJ, like he looked like he
was in
Mardi Gras forever.
Yeah. Crazy part, if you look at CJ's pictures, you're gonna see one of them is gonna have a school van in the background. That's my son's school. I was actually in the parade he was in, I guess on the opposite side, but I was so locked in of making sure no one crossed in front of the band to protect the kids. I didn't see who was on the parade route. But yeah, he listened to my son play the drums. That's pretty dope.
It's pretty cool just in general. I mean, like, this is Mardi Gras doesn't not rarely, but the frequency that it's going to fall on All-Star Weekend is going to be like once every half dozen years, once every 10 years, maybe. And so the fact that it happened, I mean, cool to see the NBA player turn out,
Yeah.
Most of these dudes, when they were playing in New Orleans or when they play in New Orleans, the NBA schedules a very convenient road trip to get the Pelicans out of town while Mardi Gras is happening. So they haven't even really gotten, they might get a day or two. But yeah, I mean, looks like they all had some fun. I'm glad that they did. Kind of shows like the special bond like that team also had. That version of that team.
Yep. And in perfect weather, it was 72 and sunny almost every damn day during the last 7 days of Mardi Gras. So it was outside of the Shia LaBeouf nonsense. It was really damn cool. And I'm not a carnival person, but I had a fun time.
Yeah, so a lot happened. Obviously, prior to Mardi Gras was the trade deadline. Very easy to forget about. Nothing really happened with regards to the Pelicans. A lot happened around the league. I think
I kind of predicted that.
Trades. What's that?
See, I kind of predicted that on the last podcast that we won't do much of anything.
You did. There's clips of that all over the place. But yeah, 18 trades on the day of the deadline, 28 in the week leading up. A flurry of activity prior to the deadline, uh, which is abnormal. Usually it happens within, that day. But, there was a couple of big trades, James Harden, Anthony Davis. Obviously the Trae Young stuff had happened a little while, prior to that. What else was there? What else was there? I feel like there was a ton of movement. Oh yeah, the Vucevic trade. The Bulls acquired 20 million guards. Uh, ducked the tax. So that tax bill is a lot to cover there. Pelicans extremely active on their part. They waited and then they finally dumped Jose Alvarado to the Knicks so they can open up a roster spot. They got back. I'm not going to read out the complicated version of these picks. What you need to understand is they going to get Detroit's second round pick this year, which is either going to be 60th because they're the best team in the league, or 59th because if OKC passes them again. And then they got another late pick for next year. They got Dalen Terry, amazing, awesome. So they can convert Bryce McGowan's, who they just did. A lot to process. Let's start with the initial Jose trade reaction thoughts.
Pelicans are about to make a player real pissed in the draft, and that pick at the end of the second round, that dude's gonna prefer to be an undrafted free agent. You don't pick where he goes, but instead it's gonna end up in New Orleans. But yeah, I don't know. Like that trade, I'm happy for Jose. I think anyone who has been a supporter of his, and to be able to see what he was able to do, on this Pelicans team and make a name for himself. And he's immediately made a hell of an impact for New York too, in Boston. And then I think that was the first game he played was in the Garden. And yeah, I mean, look, it's the Pelicans didn't really get much of value for him, like you said, right? A couple of picks, but like this pick is this one of the picks is total junk, right? And the second one might be mid, so. It's basically, they opened up a spot, didn't have to pay to do it. I don't think it was fair value to me for Jose, but they needed to open up this roster spot. You can make an argument they needed to open up some minutes for DeJounte coming back. So I get it. You got something for him. Better that than having to pay to dump someone else. And so if you can't find a home for Poole, if you can't find a home for DeJounte, I understand why they did it.
Yeah, basically echo Mason's sentiments, and include that, man, Jose is made for MSG, man. They're going to thrive off of his energy and back and forth. That arena is going to erupt every time he does something. He did a GTA on his first televised game against Boston. Just the last game, they benched their $45 million man in
5 first-round picks.
5 exactly, and Mikal Bridges to play Jose. To play 3 guards, and he did his thing with Kevin Durant. The first game that you saw, he scrammed Jalen Brunson out of the defense against Boston and just terrorized Jaylen Brown. Just from jump, you saw his impact defensively. And once he gets hot from 3, there's damn near nothing you can do to stop that dude. For the Pelicans, as you guys talked about, it opened up a spot to get Bryce McGowan's his standard contract. Salute to him. Congratulations to him. And with the new DeJounte Murray coming back, he is going to need minutes. So from one point guard to another.
Yeah, exactly. I think that I saw some things floating around there. Well, maybe the Pelicans didn't know that Jose would have re-signed. He had an option. He could have opted out. He could have left. You can't ever confirm these things because you don't actually know until the money's in front of you and the market. To my understanding, though, Jose had no desire to be traded, wanted to be in New Orleans, would have signed for a reasonable deal. But I think this is one of these situations where he gets to go home and, he gets to play meaningful basketball, and home is home. You can't replicate that, can't replace that. I don't think he's too upset that he's going home. But I don't think those arguments hold weight that he wouldn't have resigned, or they had to get something because he was going to leave, that kind of stuff. I think this is, in the grand scheme of things, if you were to just evaluate this trade, I'd give it a solid meh. Like meh, meh. I don't think it's a bad trade. I don't think it's a good trade. I don't think it's something that's going to break their back when it comes to team building. In fact, you could say that, as you guys already pointed out, the need to open up guard minutes and that roster spot was transactional stuff that had to be done. It's just another series of gut punches to the emotional side of cheering for the Pelicans, rooting for the Pelicans, for Pelicans fans. I know people, my girlfriend, for example, not interested in the Pelicans at all, heard that Jose was traded and was me like, why? Like, why? Like that was her favorite player. I've heard so many stories like that, just anecdotally, where people are like, dude, like this is a guy that brought it his all. And then there's that emotional attachment where he was that undrafted guard and he delivered time after time in these crazy moments. And despite his physical stature, he was able to produce and win at such a high degree. So I do think it is a big fat F when it comes to the emotional side of the Pelicans.
And one last Jose point, I remember his rookie year doing Mardi Gras break with Fletcher being in the booth on the parade route, having a Jose jersey on, and then Jose joining him, talking about how much fun he's having and how much he loved this city, and he displayed that on the court night in and night out. He's a fan favorite. Someone put in here, rip the 2022 to 24 Pels. Yeah, exactly. Like that's the most recent success that we had, and he played a major role in it. Basically, with CP3 retiring, I know a lot of people are attached to him. I remember that playoff series just saying the 2021 draft class, Herb, Trey, and Jose, basically dispatching the need, in my opinion, to have reverence for CP3 anymore. Like, they showed, no, we can hold it down for this team. We're going to be the era that helps you guys through the next step of the Pelicans basketball. And, he's going to be missed here, man. He's going to be missed here by not just basketball purists, but by the average fan. Everyone loved that dude.
And finally, like I think you guys already touched on it, he won his minutes. So finding a player that can play that role, that wins their minutes, is going to be a task for the Pelicans. And right now, it's going to fall on Jeremiah Fears and DeJounte coming back. And salute to Jeremiah, who's been playing a lot better. He has been trending upwards towards winning those minutes. He's had strung together multiple games where he's been a plus. And so I get it. You need to clear that room for the guy you invested the lottery pick in, and that's just how it is. And frankly, I'm excited to see what Jeremiah is able to do over this stretch of March and April basketball, where there's a crazy race to the bottom from a ton of teams, and there's no real incentive from the Pelicans to race to that same bottom. And so I think this is a good environment for both the Pelicans, or all three of the Pelicans rookies, to kind of get some reps and see if they can get some momentum going in towards the next season. I want to transition. Do you guys have any final thoughts on the Jose deadline or anything of that?
No. I mean, my only comment is to stress what you said about the fan emotional investment piece of this, because I heard the same. Heard the same from my brother. I think I texted you guys. Like he's a casual basketball fan, but certainly knows who Jose is, and looks like we gave him away for nothing, right? And fans don't know him. They don't think of him as like a backup point guard, right? They think about him as someone who's brings a lot of energy for the team that not many other players on the team have. And so I think that is certainly meaningful, and it's a bummer that he's the casualty for that roster spot, but I think it is, it's a very valid point, especially a team that hasn't won much of anything lately. Those are the things fans cling to because there's nothing else to cling to. So I think it's certainly worth it, and we can't just stop to say, oh, the transactional perspective, it makes sense, right? There's other pieces to this as a fan,
Yeah, and that last point about those second round picks. One thing the casual fan is probably not in tune to is the second round is not really a draft. It is effectively free agency. And what happens is you have a ton of agents who are maneuvering their clients to their preferred spots all the way up to becoming undrafted. There are a ton of guys who would rather go undrafted than end up in a certain spot because they know they might get that guaranteed deal. They might get that roster spot. Otherwise, teams after the 35th to 36th pick, all they're doing are they're offering two ways, not even using the second round pick exception. So if all you have is a two-way on the table, you have agents strong arming a lot of teams saying, hey, don't ruin this relationship. Hey, don't do it over a two-way, and then maneuvering their clients. So having the 60th pick is completely useless. And even the 59th. And those are picks that can be bought with cash, which obviously this franchise is never going to do. They did get cash back. They did get cash back.
Let's not bring that up. Nope, don't stop. We having a heartfelt moment for Jose. Let's not bring up that.
No, we're done with that. We put the book on that. We're going to the transactions. But yeah, they could buy those picks. They got the cash, which was obviously used to waive Dale and Terry. But honestly, wouldn't the actual correct basketball move would be to sell the 60th pick and then just sign a guy undrafted, right? Like, unless you think that, hey, there's this guy and then we're just going to draft him. Doesn't matter at all. We're just going to do it.
That pick is sold. That pick is sold, man. That pick is already sold.
Who wants to buy it? I don't know.
Do you think because I think two questions. First, that aspect of the draft with agent maneuvering and all this, it's more pronounced than it used to be, right? Like, it's going way further up the draft than it used to be. Does the league care? That's my second question.
I would say the league has enabled it by making it a 2-day draft. And now you have a whole another day for this maneuvering to occur. The first round ends and then there's nothing. And then there's the second round, which I think all that maneuvering has already happened by the time you get to day 2. The second thing that's going on here is that the whole college and NIL situation has completely diluted the second round. And to a degree, the first round as well. There are guys in college that could be late first round picks that will opt to go back. And because they're just going to earn a couple million. They're going to be the face of whatever that college franchise is. They're going to have a sweet gig and they can just enter the draft later again. So it's this situation where I think scouting is going to be even more important because there's just not going to be that same concentration of talent later in the draft. And it's going to be a situation where I think you're going to see the return of older multi-year players being drafted and teams kind of leaning on those as opposed to, hey, we're just going to take a swing at, this teenager or this prospect or whatever.
Question. It could be really short because we have other things to talk about. Do you think for as deep as this draft is, there are going to be some players who see their projected 22, 25 and their agents, handlers or whatever are going to look at the 2027 draft and say, hey, how about you get some more money in college and then wait until 2027 where you may become a lotto pick or something like in that aspect?
It's certainly possible. I would say, if you had to evaluate the field, there's probably at least one guy that does that. Just probabilistically. You just don't know. But at the same time, a lot of these kids, especially the teenagers, it's their dream to get into the NBA, and that's guaranteed money that you're going to turn down. First round pick is guaranteed money. So I don't think it's an easy decision for those guys, but the second round pick, it's an easy decision. You're talking a few $100K for a two-way and, having to fly back and forth between the G League or not even get real play time, etc. Or whatever these boosters are pumping in to these college programs and whatever that situation is, it's probably much, much more than a two-way. I know for a lot of guys, it is way more than a two-way. And then they are literally the stars of that program. They are people worship the ground they walk on in college, so it's a completely different situation. And I just think that second round is going to be even more diluted. It's just not, those picks are not as valuable. So we'll see how that plays out over the next couple of years. I do think that there's an outcry for regulation in college, in the college space. It's a little bit of the Wild West at the moment. You have guys who have been drafted to the NBA that are returning to play college. James Najee and Baylor. There's a couple of situations in the NBA where guys they have two-way offers, but they're not taking two-way offers because they're trying to keep their eligibility open to return back to college where they can make more money. And so this is a situation. And then you have the NCAA. I'm sorry to go off on this tangent here. I know both you guys aren't draft guys, but I really do think it's like one of these like conversations that are gonna occur.
Not a draft guy, but this is a historic, supposed to be a historic draft. So I've been paying attention to the ancillary conversations surrounding the draft. So please,
Yeah, and so like the other thing is that the NCAA and the coaches and like the conference heads and all those like bureaucrats who run the NCAA have a real interest in suppressing the wages of the college athletes. And they're trying to pass legislation that will effectively basically like allow them to not treat these guys like employees, and so they can keep benefiting off their labor. And so like there's this push and pull where the NCAA I think is attempting to go at some point like, man, like, look, this is the Wild West. We can't do anything. We can't regulate this. We need to go. We need the Congress. We need the courts to just crack down on this. And really, it's just about these, again, these bureaucrats and these coaches and these, this establishment people taking the money and not the kids. Like that's what it's going to come down to. So there's a big legal battle that I think is lurking. But yeah, those are real conversations right now that agents are trying to navigate through, because if you are an agent who represents a guy who's not a first round pick, like how do you advise that guy versus a couple $1 million, or taking a two-way and axing his eligibility or that kind of stuff. And I think that's why it's going to be more important than ever for a lot of these guys to employ the right representation too. So fascinating stuff. Sorry for people whose eyes glazed over that whole thing.
We love talking hoops and all aspects of it, and the transaction parties, including the kids who getting paid in college. We like discussing it over here.
Yeah, I think regardless what happens on that front, I think the snowball effect over a period of years, obviously, like as a player, like you only have so much NCAA eligibility, right? And then as a player, also in the NBA, we've talked a lot about what the value in the drafting a 23-year-old versus a 20-year-old, right? And so to your point around having the representation, there's so much to consider, right? It's like you're not going to just be able to just wait a year till you finally have the year where you're like, I'm going to get in the first round this year. Like you got like maybe one other shot, maybe two other shots, right? And so figuring out the right time to jump is going to be a challenge. And so you need to have the right person helping you make that call.
I think Cedric Coward for the Grizzlies is a perfect example. He only played 11 games, but he realized, strike now and not sit out another year, not play another year. And he got drafted lotto when people thought he wasn't going to be, he went to Duke and then decided to sit out and he went lotto. So you got to know exactly when to come out.
For sure. We can transition towards the other aspect of the Pelicans trade deadline is their actual inactivity, where they broadcasted in December locally that they didn't want to move Trey, Herb, Zion, and their two rookies. And then in January, they broadcasted to Chris Haynes that they didn't want to move those 5 people. And then come deadline, they didn't move any of those guys. But they also didn't move some of the other guys that may have been rumored, Yves Missi being chief amongst those. So I know, Jeremy, you predicted the inactivity. I want to hear more about your thoughts on how their approach to the deadline ended up working out, and what you might think they will do in a couple months from now because of it.
I think they really like this core, believe it or not. I truly believe they can win with these guys. Do I agree? Not really, especially if you follow me on social media, you'll know I think it's time to tether to the studs. But I believe that they can win, and they just don't have the right people, personnel to lead the players on the court into winning. I think they see the talent. They see it from a first overall pick, and combined with two wings that if everyone loves, then surely we can use them. Plus, a guy we're going to talk about later in Saddiq, who has become a revelation, and their rookies can develop. And Misi has had a great bounce back year, a sophomore season. I think they believe that this is a core they can build around and win games. They're 6-6 in their last 12. Make of that what you will, but there is proof of concept with Herb, Saddiq, and the other talented guys that they can compete and win games. Plus, DeJounte's coming back. So I truly believe that people in the front office think they have their guys.
I think that is an insane thing to think. I think that's absolutely insane. Anyone with eyes should know that that's like blows my mind that could be possible. Like, sorry, like the thing is, to make this group work, you need someone else way better to help slot each of those guys into the roles they need to be playing. Like, each of those dudes can help a team win, but they're playing like one or two players. They're playing roles that are each individually too advanced for what they should be doing. And like the problem with that is if the Pelicans think that, like, all we got to do is attach 4 first-round picks to Jordan Poole or to DeJounte Murray and go get that guy. And so that's the other risk, is that you compound the issue and you make this team even more, without hope by making another panic move. Not panic's the wrong word, but making a short-sighted move in the summer and trying to find the best player you can in the market and throw a bunch of picks and go get that guy. And so, like, the problem is the Pelicans aren't like one player away; they're multiple. And so again, I don't. It's not that I don't think this group can win games, but this core by itself, it needs way more help. And there's nothing coming not enough coming in any reasonable way to help this team win. So that's just it just shows how, I don't know, I think inept this front office is in being able to be realistic about what's coming.
Their best player, according to EPM, is equal to Jalen Johnson, who is an all-star, and Trey Murphy. And they're a 500 team. Like, that's to let you know where we are. And that's before
players. 500 players, you said teams.
Oh, then they're 500 teams. Sorry, not 500 players. They're winning players, in my opinion. I love Jalen. Of course, I love Trey. But
you're talking about the record. My fault.
The record. The Atlanta and
my bad.
Atlanta's a 500 team. Like, so if that's what they're striving for, which is another conversation altogether. I mean, sure. Again, I said they're 6-6 in their last 12 games. There are games they're competing. There are games they're getting their ass kicked. But I just think he asked me why. This is my why. I believe that the people Airline Drive believe that this team can compete.
I think you're right. I think at this point we can only take them for their word, which is that exactly. I think I had an opportunity to kind of poke around and talk to teams that try to engage them on some of their players, and that's certainly the sentiment that those teams walked away with, and those teams, it's one of those things. Like, for example, hypothetically, you're a team that tried to engage them on Trey Murphy, to be like, hey, we're interested in Trey Murphy. It seemed like a lot of the trade negotiations, not even negotiations, that's not the correct word even. The initial conversations went like, okay, you're interested in Trey Murphy, okay. And then, the teams are like, well, are you do you see something on our roster or our asset space you like? And there's just not a real sense of engagement reciprocating back from the Pelicans, which in a vacuum is completely okay if these are players that you've determined you're keeping. That's fine. I think it's one of these situations where all the noise around the Queen stuff, the Poole stuff, the Indiana stuff puts some of these other more recent negotiations or conversations, again, I keep using the word negotiations, not there's no negotiating. But some of these other conversations in context where I feel, this is again me speculating, that due to the massive outcry from all those other things, the Pelicans have kind of retreated. So we'll see what happens come draft time. Let's say they really like a guy and they're really fixated, laser focused on a certain guy.
This
How
whole
they
song and
attempt to
dance
go-
again. Just do it all again.
Oh
How they attempt to
no.
So I don't know. I think there's just a lot. There's a sense that, again, like you guys both said, they love their core. They think with the right coaching and right development, internal development, they can take the next step. I'm sure you guys all saw the picture of Troy Weaver sitting courtside with Darvin Ham. So curious if you guys think that is the right coaching that may help them take the next step.
You can either say that that's the guy who had LeBron and Anthony Davis and Austin Reeves and made the Western Conference Finals, or you can say that's the guy who had those three and got swept by the champs and then got embarrassed in the first round the next season against Timberwolves. So with top 75 players and a guy who's probably going to get the max, close to the max this offseason. The Pelicans don't have nearly that type of talent. Maybe Trey is as good as Austin Reeves. That's the third best guy on that team that he got embarrassed by the Timberwolves. I personally believe that James Borrego has done more with what the talent has on this roster, and a possible downgrade in coaching can make things even worse. So I'm not a fan of a Darvin Ham hire. I will say that. So of course he's going to get a 5-year deal.
To me, it's not even about Darvin Ham. It's not about James Borrego. It's about the same thing the Pelicans did with Joe Dumars. It was just locking into a guy and saying that's our guy, and not not having a process or having a sham of a process. Like that's the issue for me. And so like until this team does anything functional, from a process perspective, it doesn't matter. Especially with the team in this market, like you can't luck your way into stuff. Like if your process is broken, every now and then you can accidentally do the right thing, right? But you don't have the luxury of making mistakes, like much less a bunch of mistakes in a market like New Orleans. And so again, it's less to me about whether Ham is the right or wrong coach or Borrego's the right or wrong coach as it is if I believe they're going to have a real process and bring in for interviews all the guys they think can do a good job. And if Darvin Ham's one of them, fine. But it just stresses me out to think that like there's like one or two guys who could be who they already think are the next head coach, and there's not going to be any sort of consideration for anyone else, including the current interim guy.
Hold on before you go, Schmidt. Yeah, Darvin lost to Nikola Jokic twice in the playoffs. So thanks for the correction. Just A. Davis in the chat. You're right. Darvin lost to the Nuggets twice. Appreciate that. He
was an in-season cup champion. I think there's not many coaches who have that trophy.
God,
so, two times. One's the coach, one's the assistant.
Pretty sure that was the year they whooped the Pelicans in Vegas. But look, here's the thing about Ham. Great person. He will come in here or anywhere, and he will hold guys accountable. He will, he'll be, if you're someone who's not bought into the program, he will tell you in no uncertain terms that you need to get with the program. And I think that's easier to do in New Orleans when you don't have a LeBron on your team. However, it seems like I don't understand why this has to be the case, but it seems like coaches get labels put on them. They're either player, motivator, accountability types, whatever, these hard-nosed guys, or they're X's and O's types. And you can't be both, which I think the best coaches are actually both. Um, I think Ham would leave a lot on the table strategically in the exact same ways that Willie did. Um, and so you got to ask yourself if that's a route that you want to go down and weigh the pros and cons of that. Likewise, the other guy that the Pelicans are rumored to be circling around currently has a job in Orlando. So he's not available yet. Similar, if you follow any of the Magic stuff that's going on, they have incredible people covering that team. Just listen to any of their podcasts, read into their articles, and it's almost identical to what Willie Green went through with New Orleans, where his two best players are never in the lineup together. One's out, the other's out. But when they are in the lineup together, it's quite average. They had to go and spend assets to get that guard who can shoot, but isn't really a true point guard. And their best players can't be put in offensive actions together because there's easy switches, and they're not really great shooters either. Man, I've heard this story before.
This is so hearing you say it, I'm like, God damn.
So Pelicans coach.
Yeah. And so, it's like you listen to some very smart people who cover the league at large. Mo DeKeel is one of them. He was on a podcast recently with Zach Lowe, and I strongly recommend people find that episode and where they discuss the Magic and their positioning in the East. And it's just a constant like, man, I wish they were a little bit more creative about freeing up shooters. I wish they were a little more involved with, moving off ball and doing this kind of stuff. And it's like, we just went through years of that exact stuff. Now they have it. They just don't have a good enough roster to accommodate it. And so I think, between Ham, Borrego, Mosley, all three guys are clearly capable of winning games with the right roster. I think that applies to 97% of coaches out there. And you got to find the guy that's the right mix for your group.
Sorry, Vinny Del Negro. You're the 3%.
Right. Well, it's like the 3% that are like make you actively worse. And then it's like, of that, there's a small percentage that like really elevate, that level. And even Hall of Fame coaches, like their fans are on their necks all the time. But again, people who listen to the show already know that I think 97% of coaching happens outside the game. But the Pelicans are in a position, I think, where they are going to be the least attractive job in the league. And so we have to kind of watch and see what other jobs open up and how teams decide to pursue it. Does the Milwaukee job open up? Does Doc get fired? Does Ham have the inside track there? I don't know. I mean, remains to be seen. What happens in Orlando? That guy's still employed. We don't know for sure he's going to get fired. It's the NBA group think right now, but things change. Like a magical playoff run can change anything.
Magical. Nice.
There are a couple other jobs that I don't want to comment on that are in a similar spot. So the other thing the Pelicans have going on right now is that all of their assistants are on like effectively expiring deals. So whoever does get this job will, for better or for worse, be able to build his own staff. And I think that's important. At least gives you, hey, man, this wasn't my guy. It at least prevents you from that kind of stuff. Do I think that the Pelicans will be able to recruit the best assistants? Remains to be seen. I don't think they're going to offer competitive salaries compared to the rest of the league. Do I think the Pelicans will have the most robust staff in terms of like I'll give you an example. Willie got fired. JB got promoted. Vacant spot on the bench, empty. Didn't fill it. Could be a guy in that seat. There isn't. And obviously the thinking is, well, why would we just bring in a guy if we're probably just going to get rid of all these guys at the end of the year? Like, why agree to another, So it's short-sighted thinking that doesn't leave you with much optimism. But kind of circling back on Ham, beyond the X's and O's, just the intel on him is, it's just so underwhelming in terms of great guy, probably not a great coach. Like great guy will, push people aggressively. That's probably his strength, which is probably what you want on like your lead like assistant coach. You want that guy to probably be the bad guy. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the dynamics are, but in my opinion, you probably want your lead to be that. Probably not a great coach when it comes to like installing real practice plans, fostering real development in this, that, the other. But I mean, this regime has clearly focused on a type. We'll see if they succeed in that. We'll see if any of those guys even want to come to New Orleans. We'll see if JB is able to rattle off a bunch of wins and makes it a conversation. I don't know. I mean, but that's kind of where they're at.
Whatever. The scariest couple words. Great guy. It's like, oh, okay. Well, then if that's what you're leading with, that means there's not much great to follow, right? If that's the headline. So
Willie was a great guy. Gail loved him.
And here we are. So
and you pointed out a few episodes ago, which may be in November, who knows with us. James Borrego, holds these players accountable and have them rerun sets over and over again if they don't get it, but also talk to them, and ask them why, like, what can I do to help integrate this, and has opened up the offensive playbook. So you have a guy on staff, in my opinion, who is getting the most out of these players, and you're just gonna discard him because he's not your guy. I get it, but I don't.
I mean, we don't know if he's being discarded yet. It's just like the consensus, right?
Possibly discarded him. I'll take it.
It's the what's the opposite of like innocent until proven guilty, right? It's kind of that, right? It's like
the interim tag is still on. We still have the interim tag. If they wanted to commit to him, they would have taken that off by now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think you can just listen to DeAndre Jordan's press conference from the locker last night, where he'll tell you JB's not afraid to get animated, for an appropriate word here. It's just, as John says in the chat, like, it's just the nature of the business. You win, you stay, you lose, you don't. Like that is what it is. All we are able to do from our vantage point is to evaluate the pros and cons and just to comment on what we will see. I personally, for years have been hoping the Pelicans bring in a guy that modernizes their whole offensive outlook. But it seems to me that this group is, I think that based on the transactions we've seen, there's no confidence I have that this group can build a team that represents modern basketball and bring in a coach that represents modern basketball. And that is where I'm scared. But contracts are not signed, anything can happen.
All right. The homie Schmidt also last week wrote a phenomenal piece, in my opinion, about a guy in June we thought was a throw-in, and now is top 3-4 player in the roster right now. And Saddiq Bey. If you guys haven't read it, it's on the Substack. I don't know how you haven't. It's a fantastic piece. I just want to know, first of all, what possessed you to write this, and more importantly, you discussed in your piece, but do you think he's a long-term fit for this core?
Saddiq Bey is an awesome basketball player, and that's what possessed me to write the article.
Amen.
Since January, he's been coming up. huge at the end of games, and pretty much it seems like their crunch time, the way it goes down is okay. We'll try to play through Zion. Defense is loaded up. He can't go anywhere. So he's probably going to have to force something or settle for that midi, which is not, I know people are harping on him taking that midi, but it's not a high value look, especially in crunch time. I wanted to take those shots, but when every possession matters, maybe not. So the defense loads up on Zion, and then they stick on glue like Trey. So where does that leave? It leaves a guy who can take that crack and blow it wide open and convert. And that's what Saddiq Bey has been for the Pelicans lately. Even in this most recent Sixers game, he just had a stretch where he was in the third quarter just frying the Sixers. I was sitting next to the Ball podcast guests, host and guest. They flew in from Philly during the third quarter. I sat next to him. Got to the point where they were chanting "Fire Daryl Morey" while free throws were occurring, and Saddiq Bey was cooking. But bringing it back to Bey, he's just been someone that over the course of the season has morphed into whatever role the Pelicans have needed him to play, whether that is a spacer, whether that's a mismatch hunter in the post, and now a closer. And so I thought he was absolutely worth writing about, talking about the one story that is going well in the city of New Orleans with regards to basketball or professional basketball. Shout out UNO, going well.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, I mean, he's just been great, and he's going to be extension eligible this coming summer. So that's a conversation to have. They didn't trade him, and if you're not going to trade him, and he's going to be expiring at the draft, maybe there's a window where that's how they get back into the first round. Maybe he's someone that can slide into pretty much any contender's salary structure at that $6.3 million wherever he's at, or they can just extend him, and he's eligible for 4 years and $93 million in terms of new money on his extension. Where would you guys be comfortable from a salary standpoint on his extension value?
In the 2027 offseason, I looked up, and it's the internet, so it may not be true or not, but it's roughly $16 million for the MLE for the 2027 season. A extension in that ballpark of maybe $1 million or so more, plus 8% raises, I will be more than comfortable giving him that, because like you say, he can morph into whatever you need him to be. He's an absolute bucket. The take I've put in private that I'll say in public now, he is what Brandon Ingram with the correct usage should be. He gets his buckets in the post, but instead of fading away, he gets to the cup. He wants to attack. He wants to beat people up, and I love that. And in his last 25 games, he's putting up 19 points a game on 59% true shooting. Like, he is a legit bucket getter. And Schmidt spoke on his, how he is closing, but also there are spurts where he just gets the ball and mismatch hunt, and he puts people in the basket, man. He draws fouls. He does everything you want in a lower usage scorer that I love. So I have no reservation signing him for a contract that starts at 16, 17, 18 million dollars a year.
You're inviting trouble with that BI comment. You were inviting trouble, sir.
His jersey's right here. I need people to understand.
That's a Micah Peavy jersey, bro. I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't have me take this off the wall. That is his jersey, yo. This is not VI slander. I'm just saying that some people shouldn't have 30 usage rates.
Look, Saddiq Bey is clearly, like, I think the amount of minutes he's been playing this year off an ACL injury is really impressive, first of all. Second, he's 26. This next contract's taking him through the rest of his NBA prime. Like those are two. Like so, I am saying, okay, injury's not a concern anymore. 1, 2, I'm getting him at arguably peak years. Maybe and he took a year off too, right? So all those things are working in his favor. He's playing best basketball of his career. I give this guy $20 million a year. Yeah, like absolutely. I'm not blanking at that in this salary landscape we're in in 2026. Like he's earned it. Like, I'm happy to give him that cash. And look, if what the max is, it's 493. Schmidt, is that right?
Yeah, 493 first year starting at 20.8 million.
If I gotta go there, I'll go there. Like I just there's too many things that are too many good things to say about him and how he's playing this year for me to flinch at that. Again, in New Orleans, you need to keep dudes like this. So again, I'm not like you're on your article, Schmidt, you don't start there, right? But if it goes there and that's the way that's the tax you got to pay to keep a guy like Bey in New Orleans, that the way he's playing, I'm doing it. Yeah.
And is that a tax for a guy that's getting you 20 a game for the
last
30 games or so? Like that's not even a tax. Like that is something that I wouldn't say welcome, but like you say, if he presses like I want the maximum amount of money that I can get, I don't know where you're gonna go in the open market and find what he does at his size and just being a calming presence on the offensive end.
But on the flip side, where's he gonna go in the open market and find that money? Right. He's a guy again coming off those injury concerns. At those $6 million, in order to get that money, he'd be limited to the MLE, as you said, which is 15 and change. It's not even 16. It'd be 15 and change, and so he'd probably get up to like 60 million. Or you have to find a cap space team who's willing to do that, or you can't even do sign and trades that get you up to that amount because of the whole base year comp rule. So I think the Pelicans have the ability to play a little bit of hardball if they wanted to. I'm not saying, look, the negotiations got to get hostile. Like these are collaborative efforts. They have a great relationship with that agency, Excel. Trey Murphy is an Excel guy. That's Bey is an Excel guy. They've had CJ. Well, yeah, they had CJ in the past, but that different regime. But still, that's somewhat, that's an agency you want. It's one of those power agencies that you want to keep the relationship with, so they don't have to get hostile. But if you're also Bey, you haven't had your ginormous payday yet. So are you willing to hold out for that full 493, or would you take, what if it was 360? Like it was just 20 mil a year average annual value, and you start at 19 something, and your final year is at 21. It allows you to extend sooner, extend at a greater amount, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's ways to go about it. They can get creative. Yeah. But ultimately, as Mason said, I don't think 493 cripples you from a team building perspective if you can manage all your other stuff. It could cripple you if you decide to extend Jordan Poole for whatever reason, or something like that. But that would be more Poole crippling you than Bey.
Yeah. It's an incredibly important point that the Pelicans have a knack for negotiating against themselves, and so it's important to understand what the market will bear. And I think where you went at the end there, Schmidt, is spot on. Like, I think the best leverage Bey has is like, all right, 2 years, not 4. And so that's the question is like, if the Pelicans, are you willing to go to that extreme on a 4-year deal if it gets him locked in for 4 versus, him just trying to take that max amount of money he can for 2 years and saying, I'll take my chances, and probably certainly wants a player option in that 3rd year if he does something like that, right? So yeah, I mean, the fact that Bey didn't get traded means we're likely heading down this path to have this discussion, and I can't wait to see what the Pelicans do in this negotiating room, because we know they're all very shrewd negotiators there with this team. So we'll see what happens.
The other guy that they got to negotiate with is Zion. Zion, who has played the most consecutive games of his career, has now hit that 41 game threshold where he's got additional guaranteed money. He's going to hit the weight checkpoints. I can promise you that. He's at 12% body fat. at
He
like
looks
260
amazing.
something.
Like he just
Yeah,
looks
and
amazing. Like
he's gonna hit those weight checkpoints, which were capped at like 295, and he's like at 268 plus the 12, which would get him to 280, and so he's well underneath where he needs to be. He's probably going to, at this rate, knock on wood, but I'm willing to be give him the benefit of the doubt here. He's probably going to play out his the rest of this season in a way that guarantees that next season. And even if he didn't, I don't think he would get, at this point, he's getting waived in that 2-week window where he can actually get waived, because now, again, because he hit 41 games and he's going to hit those weight clauses, more than half of his contract is guaranteed. So you're not actually gaining anything in terms of flexibility by waiving him. It's just not going to happen. So you're at this critical inflection point with Zion that you were with Brandon a few years ago. 2 years left on the deal. Got to figure out if you're extending him, because if you don't, you hit that final season and you got 1 year left on the deal, and there's just no way to recoup any value if you try to go down the trade route. I just think that when you have a player of that caliber, you get to that 1 year left, it spells trouble if you allow it to get there. But I'm curious to hear you guys' thoughts on where they might go this summer. They don't have to be in depth. I'm sure we'll talk about Zion stuff a lot.
Yeah. If you follow me on social media, you've seen me say they should cut Zion. I've said it on this podcast before. That was before the 41 game mandate mark. So will only be like $18 million that you owed him next year. Now it's too late. You crossed the threshold where it's not prudent to pay him $25-26 million. And quite frankly, I believe this organization, again, they believe in this guy. They want him on this roster. So when I made those comments, it's not about Zion the person, it's not about Zion the athlete. But at his price point, which is going to be $42 million next year, he's only averaging 22 points a game. He's a 22, 6, and 4 player. Like, we just talked about Saddiq Bey, and go ahead. No, please.
I would push back on that, because they could juice his stats if they wanted to. They are actively trying to empower all of their players. So that includes Zion's out there with Queen a ton. Queen has no off-ball utility at all. And so when Queen is out there, you got to play through him, and he's pretty good at putting the cutters in their places, finding those lobs and that kind of stuff.
You pointed out yesterday post game and you put it out on social media that Zion and Trey are very, very good. Zion's the best, and Trey's up there, or Try Murphy. Shouts out to spelled they're great at attacking off cuts, and it helps with Queen being on ball. So I see how that works.
Like if they wanted Zion to average 28, he could. They could absolutely do it. Is that the best for him? Is that the best for this team? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
He's taking three shots less per game than last year on the exact same amount of minutes. Like, yeah, you're right. Like they could be feeding him more, and they're not. So
they should be feeding him more. I'm gonna say they should be feeding him more. I want to believe that my max player, if that means benching Queen, or if that means benching Queen to get the most out of your best players, so be it.
That's unrealistic.
It just feels
roster. They also invested that draft capital on Queen. How are they? He's going to.
But that goes back to before the Bucks game. They should have released Zion. Now they've made, in my opinion, they've hit an inroad that they didn't need to. They didn't need to, because you need to invest in either one on-ball big who can't shoot, or the other, and you continue to invest in both, and it neuters each other's play. Ever since Zion's been back as a starter, Queen's offensive production has plummeted, is the wrong word, but he has been worse, and he's not doing as he's turning the ball over more. There's a play that the Pelicans put as a highlight for Bay 3, and the first thing I saw was there are 3 Bucks in Queen's space because they don't care about Bryce or they don't care about Zion on the right side of the court. So they're just collapsing on him, knowing that he still doesn't have the best dribble. They on court, the geometry of the court doesn't work well with those two together, and that you can see it. And that's why I was saying, hey, it's not Zion the player, it's Zion the contract that they should move. Now, since they're going to keep him, I personally would love to have the thought process of he can single-handedly win games. And if that means sacrificing Queen's productive, since you've already done that, push that envelope, push that button. I would like to see it again. Or are you fearful that if he goes full bore again, he's going to get injured? Which is another conversation I have. And to me, I just don't think I think those two don't work well together. They don't complement each other's weaknesses on both ends of the court. And one guy, you invested draft capital, and now you didn't have to, but now you didn't invested financial capital into the other guy. I just don't understand.
Yeah, look, I get it. Like, I get it. We can sit here and talk about they don't fit together. They're on this team. They're gonna be on this team. So my question again is, when they have extension conversations with Zion, what do those look like for you? And two, I'm gonna follow up with this. Clearly, Darvin Ham and Jamal Mosley are the right guys to optimize these clunky fits, right? Like,
oh God, let's not do this.
No, seriously. Like, I want to bring it back to the extension stuff, right? Like, I think they're going to have those conversations. I think people need to be prepared for Zion Williamson inking a new deal with the New Orleans Pelicans. Here, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, I don't know. I don't know the extent of it. I think those are going to be real conversations, and they're going to happen in a couple months here. So, knowing what you know, like, where are you on those? What does that need to look like for you if it does transpire?
There's so many dynamics at play here. Like, let's say, well, first of all, Zion's got to finish the season healthy, right? Like, that's priority number one. And so that also could be a piece of some of the stuff we were just talking about. And is Zion not shooting as much because he's not pushing the envelope as much to keep him healthy? I think it's a fair question to be asking. But I mean, I think the Pelicans have every right to have a conversation around the exact same types of injury protections that they've been discussing before, because nothing's changed. The fact that this year he's finally having a decently healthy season doesn't erase the years before that. And so, I mean, I think that's still an important piece of the discussion. And then, duration. I mean, I think I would be very nervous to talk long, like another 4 or 5 year deal. So I don't even know where to start with Z. Like, I guess fundamentally, I agree with you that it's important to have the discussion to consider an extension with Zion, because if you don't, you get down this path that he's probably just gonna walk, or his trade value goes so far down. But I guess, like, the question around what is his trade value right now is also what's that?
For me, walking is fine. That's a fine.
Yeah.
For me.
That's kind of where I was going, was that it's clear his value league wide is not massive, right? Like, even with him playing these games, like 40 games or whatever, like, so I don't know what are you protecting against is another question. So I think they need to have the conversations. But I would not, Pelicans got to hold the line here. Like, I would not be afraid to walk away, and you certainly can't get stuck paying him something that would be damaging for the next time he has a major injury, right? Like, it's a very treacherous situation, I think, with Zion here.
So to answer your point, to answer your question about the extension. So Julius Randle signed a 3-year, $100 million extension with Timberwolves. It starts at
Zion
a
is a
little
worse
less.
player than Randall.
Hear me out. It started at 30, a little less than 31 million. To me, that is the cap. And you have to have the injury protections in there like you had before. You have to have the weight clauses in them before. To me, 300 is the cap that I'm offering. And remember, this is Julius he's getting 20% of the cap right now. I'm not saying giving Zion that 20%. No. That's where we're ending at. If you feel insulted, then if I can't find a trade partner, we can end this relationship however it goes. Like that, I would give. I don't think I would want to pay him more than I'm paying Trey Murphy, which is roughly 26 million a year. I think he's a fine starting NBA player, which is not what he's currently being paid, and I'm not getting close to that for his next deal.
Here's a series of facts that Zion and his team will need to grapple with. There is no trade market for him. None. Nobody wants him on their team. If they did, he wouldn't be here. 2, that same market is what it's going to be like in free agency. Teams that hoard cap space don't spend it on guys like Williamson. They don't. And so I think there's going to be a reality check. I think it would be financially disastrous if the Pelicans were to do anything above that amount that you talked about. And it would have to come with all the bells and whistles. The 30 mil a year range is that top end. And that's, kind of where it needs to go. And that will allow them to actually build a cohesive team at some point because you're not occupying a max salary slot. But just like with Brandon Ingram, there's no max out there waiting for you. None. There's no Toronto out there waiting that you can get a short-term deal that's slightly above the value that you would have gotten if you tested some other waters. And so it's just one of those things where, like, same thing with BI. He wanted the full $200 million. He had to settle for far, far, far less. And he turned it down. He turned down 160 from New Orleans because he thought he could get more. And he didn't. He just didn't. Now, like, he's gone to Toronto on a lower cap deal. Toronto's been able to fit in certain pieces around him, and they've been really good. But Toronto's back again in that salary crunch because of other contracts, because of their ascending star in Scotty Barnes. And it's going to create those same conversations. How do you go from a pretty good team to the next level when you have all of these guys making that kind of money? And Zion's the same thing. There is no max out there waiting for him. There's not. No team is going to give it to him. So the Pelicans are going to have to, like, the previous regime absolutely would have strong armed him. Like, just like they got him to sign a historically unprecedented deal with all of those injury clauses and protections and the weight clauses, the monthly weigh-ins and all that kind of stuff. Never has a deal in the NBA been signed like that before. And it's one of those situations where, like, that's just the reality of it. Gonna pull up a comment here from Just A Davis. Yeah, that 40 a year from BI that he got is not anywhere close to his max. His close was 50 a year, or his max was 50 a year, and he wanted that over 4 years. And so he wanted the $200 million. And so he got less years, less money for a team, and a team overpaid because they knew in that market they couldn't attract a free agent like him. Do I think BI is worth that? There's conversations again that Saddiq Bey is producing similar impact at a much less dollar amount. So, I think Pelicans need to tread with a ton of caution when it comes to Z, because a whole other conversation is the backdrop of this is the Queen stuff. Do they fit together? How do they fit together? Are you going to pay Queen? Is Queen a foundational piece? All of that stuff. And so you can't just dive headfirst into long-term money for Z and then be like, oh, we'll figure it out with Queen. Because that just puts you in this, like, a space that no organization needs to be, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's all fascinating. Like, I could do without. I mean, this is going to come back to haunt me, but like I could do without the weight clauses in the contract, like that. I don't think I need that, but I do need the games played stuff. Like, and hopefully he can connect the two, right? Like I care more about my body. I'm working harder to stay in basketball shape. I'm not going to mess with that in order to stay on the floor because there are games play clauses in the contract, right? So, but otherwise, yeah, I'm with you guys. I think that the problem with Zion that we've talked about for years is the roster building challenges that come with him, right? And how hard, like we talk about Queen, talk about all these different non-shooting bigs that he's played with, and it's just like putting, like, even if he was playing at a star level or you know, borderline superstar level, like it's still hard to build around him, and that certainly massively contributing to the fact that he doesn't really have much of a market. Like, okay, I trade for Zion. Who am I going to put next to him? Like at this salary amount, it's just hard to build around. So
I'm going to push back on it's hard to build around him. That 2023-2014 was very fucking good. And they had the center that fits best with him, who can screen, who can rebound, and who can score. And Jonas Valanciunas. That's the center that he needs around. I believe it's an overrated thought process that you need a rim protector when a shooter next to Zion. JV was a great center around him. He had shooters, he had defenders, he had everyone to mask his deficiencies while being the great paint scorer. But he didn't play.
You ain't getting deep in the playoffs with Jonas as the starting center, man.
Jonas made the Eastern Conference Finals, man. He made the Eastern Conference Finals. You can go deep into the playoffs. Don't talk about when they got Gasol and won the whole thing. But that's a different story. But you can also.
I think it was Kawhi who may have helped that one.
It may have been a little bit. The other part is Zion has to play like a top 5 player to get deeper into the playoffs. He had a great supporting cast. That team insulated all his mistakes, and he didn't show up until he was the best player on the court and got hurt in the playing game. But he contributed to that team not getting as far as it could, as much as the roster around him. Because I contend 3 through 15 on that team was ready to win the championship. They just needed their stars to show up.
Yeah, look, I think that the reality of it is, and I think every team should always approach these extension talks like the player is not on their team, and if they were a free agent, would they give him that amount? And I just don't think there's any team out there that values Zion to that level. And the empirical case for it, even without all the other stuff, is that from an impact standpoint, he has not been top 25 level for years. He's slipped to 50, to 75, 90, 100-ish mark there. And that's largely due to his lack of ancillary skills, his ability to play a role, do the dirty work. And that's diminished the impact. And that offensive output has also declined on a steady basis. Although this year, again, his efficiency is up, his assisted percentage of looks is up, his efficiency at the rim is up. Again, going back to him being more of an off-ball player, and Borrego being able to generate easy looks for him at the basket in a way that Willie just from a 3-year basis was unable to do. He got worse and worse and worse. And now all of a sudden you're seeing Zion health trend up and his efficiency trend up. And it's because he's not the focal point of the team anymore. And he's a role player. But yeah, I mean, it's something that we're all going to be excited to watch, I'm sure, this summer. I just hope it's not one of those. Yeah, Pelicans have agreed to because the max he could extend for, he would be eligible for a 30%.
Don't even put this out in the universe, man.
No, we go there. That's with 30%.
30% max. 30% max. Where I think at that year, it's going to be like 60 million a year. Like it's going to be it's going to be like 55 to 60 million a year. And because he would have 2 years left on his deal, he could add 3 more years, it'd be 5 total.
3 Saddiq Beys. That's 3.
Would you sign him to 3 years and $170 million?
Heavens no.
That's the max.
Actually, it's like 10 Saddiq Beys right now with what he's making right now.
3 years, $170 million. That's, I don't know. But we'll see. We'll see where they end up at. Anyways, this show has gone on for a while. I want to put a bow in it. Jay, take us home.
As always, thank y'all for joining us. We got up to 40 people at one point in the chat. We appreciate y'all. Like, subscribe, hit the thumbs up, hit the bell, tell a friend to tell a friend. Happy Black History Month. Love y'all. Be out.